Stone from Residents Organized for a Safe Environment from California. We're here to rally today with the other national groups to come together to start the first national action since the 80s to bring up to our congresspeople and to the NRC our concern for the safety of America's aging nuclear fleet. And we believe that it's time to start decommissioning much of this now. We're creating, we have created over 5 million toxic pounds of high-level plutonium waste in America as of this point. Our nuclear power plants have. And so every day, each reactor is producing a minimum of 250 pounds per day of waste for our children. So we're concerned for the children of the future. We're here to stand and speak for the earth and to speak for our children that it's time to clean up the earth and not create any more toxic waste for our future generations to deal with.
That was pitiful. Let's try it again. Good morning, everyone. Let's try something a little bit more emotionally charged. No nukes! Again, no nukes! No nukes! Okay, now that I've got your attention, welcome to the Coalition Against Nukes Rally for a Nuclear-Free Future. My name is Libby Halevi, and I've been working as communications coordinator for the 3 days here. I'm also going to be your MC and host for the rally today, and in my spare time I produce and host Nuclear Hot Seat podcast. So I want to thank you. I want everybody here to just acknowledge the fact that you are here. This is an historic day because this is the start of the reunited nuclear movement towards nuclear sanity and a nuclear-free America and beyond that, the world. We never expected throngs through this year because we knew that it was going to be an ingathering of our tribe of people. Every one of you who's here is important, is doing important work, and we're going to get a chance to feature a goodly number of you from this stage today. What I would like to do in getting us started is call forth some of the people who have been behind the creation of this day to get you oriented. The first person coming up is very active on the West Coast in the battle against San Onofre and a battle for planet Earth, which he has more to say about. One of the strong, consistent activists in Southern California, of which we are blessed to have so many. Let's welcome to the stage Gene Stone.
Welcome, everyone. What is it that we want? No nukes! No nukes! I just wanted to say, to start off, to set the stage, we knew this was going to be a small gathering of people, but that's good, because small gatherings get bigger. And we plan to get bigger and more organized. So the opportunity that is at hand is that all of us from the different parts of the countries and the different organizations will be able to meet face to face. We'll be able to coordinate our actions nationwide. And that hasn't been happening since the 80s. We've all been doing our work where we're at, and some of us have felt like we were alone. But we're not alone. And people are awakening after Fukushima. It's a shame that had to happen. But it did. And we need to protect the rest of the world from this nuclear madness. And the way that we can do that is by getting together and coordinating with each other. Thank you very much. I'll speak a little bit later. Thank you. Back to Libby.
Little bit of tactical information. If you have a cell phone camera, if you have any kind of recording device, if you have a little video camera, let's take a page out of the book from Occupy. Let's take pictures, let's take audio, all of it. If you can tweet it, if you can Facebook it while we're here, that's great. If not, get back to your computers as soon as you can afterwards, so we get ourselves all over the internet, because that's one of the ways that we're going to be growing this movement.
Tweet!
The two people who are have most powerfully formed a team. I never met face to face until I believe it was yesterday. But the two people who have created a team that has really been instrumental in pulling this event together. It's my pleasure to introduce you to the founder of the Coalition Against Nukes, Priscilla Starr, and Michael Leonardi, who's been coordinating so many of the events here.
Welcome to. This is a touching moment. We're together. That was the whole point of this, that we would all meet, talk to each other, get to know each other, love each other more. I wrote something down and I'm too nervous to look at it. I really hope we can remain a coalition of all the groups in the country and continue to have events after this day moving forward. That's why we're here. We may not have every group here, but we're well represented with really good speakers. So, as we come together for our first Coalition Against Nukes rally for a nuclear-free future, welcome all of you. Especially, I want to say thank you for any hardship you went through to come here. I know it was expensive. You may have encountered difficulties, but thank you so much. I knew that it would be a difficult place to come, but we have work to do. We have a lot of work to do. That's why we're here. In those three buildings, I'm not sure all the buildings, I suppose, but we have a briefing. We'll have to leave early, some of us, to set up. The room only holds 60 people in the Cannon building. We want our reps and aides to fill those seats, so some of us will have to leave at 12:30. So we'll be standing in that room. We won't be seated. When the rally ends at 2, we ask all of you as well to visit your reps and let them know we're not going away. We're not going away.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No nukes.
No nukes.
No war.
Yeah.
Let's say it again. No nukes. No war. Okay, this is the beginning of America's nuclear-free future. Let's hear that. We're going to make it happen, you asked. We're going to make it happen. So, that's all I'm going to say for now. I love you all. Thank you for coming. Forest! It's this pole forest! That's a joke because we thought it was at the other reflecting pool. So, that's my joke.
Hello everybody. I usually don't dress like this, so this is the first time I've had a suit on since March, and I'm not very comfortable in it. But I want to welcome everybody here and thank you for making some of the long journeys that you have made. And we did a lot of work to publicize this event and all over the country. And we have a lot of work to do, as you can see from the crowd here. I want to thank these guys right here from the media that have shown up. And I want to point out that apart from our own media team, it looks like there's only Japanese media here. And so I would like to point out that our media in the United States is a shameful disgrace when it comes to how they're covering nuclear issues in this country, when it comes to how they're covering global climate change issues in this country. Our media is a disgrace. Our Congress that sits up here on the Hill is another disgrace. They're not addressing these issues in any way, shape, or form. Since Fukushima happened in Japan on 3/11, there's been a gross cover-up that's been going on by the United States media, by the United States government, to downplay the threat that nuclear power plays in all of our lives. I come from Toledo, Ohio. Toledo is smack dab between two very dangerous nuclear power plants, Fermi 2 nuclear power plant that sits on the shore of Lake Erie, halfway between Toledo and Detroit, and the Davis-Bessie nuclear power plant, halfway between Toledo and Cleveland. Both of these plants, the Fermi 2 nuclear power plant is the largest Mark I design nuclear power plant in North America, and it's designed exactly like the Fukushima reactors that melted down in Japan. Davis-Bessie, Fermi 2 have released radioactivity into our environment on numerous occasions, as have all 104 nuclear power plants, decrepit and aged, that threaten populations across this country.
Every single day.
Let's not forget about Indian Point, which threatens the largest population center. 17 million people in Manhattan if there were to be a meltdown at the Indian Point nuclear power plant. We're not completely abandoned by our political representatives. We have some people that are standing up for us. We should acknowledge the good work that some people are doing. Representative Dennis Kucinich today, who is hosting our briefing, and his office has done a lot of work to coordinate with us. Representative Markey of Massachusetts, that's been doing great work on nuclear oversight issues regarding the Palisades nuclear power plant on Lake Michigan, where he's called for an Inspector General's investigation into the NRC cover-up of safety issues there. And this is something that we hear over and over again, and it's why we're going to the NRC tomorrow. Nuclear cover-up of safety issues from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission that is just giving a green light to these corporations like Exelon, like Entergy, like First Energy, that are just putting us in danger continuously day after day. We do have some support. Markey, Barbara Boxer is listening to us, is dialogue with us in California. Of course, we have Senator Bernie Sanders in Vermont that's leading the charge to shut down Vermont Yankee. So we're not alone. I'd like to thank Roots Action today, who sent out a petition to over 175,000 people over the last couple days to get the notice in that we're having this congressional briefing. I'd like to acknowledge the help that we've received from the No Nukes Sierra Club team, from Friends of the Earth, from Greenpeace, from NEARS, from Beyond Nuclear, from our nuclear watchdog organizations, and some of our environmental groups here in Washington, D.C. I'd like to just close by reading a statement, and of course I didn't prepare any of the words that I'm saying right now, it's all ad-lib, but I want to close with a statement from Kumar Sundaram from New Delhi, India. And I really think that we need to look to Japan, and we need to look to India for the leadership that we need, for the model that we need to confront nuclear power, where instead of spattering of hundreds of people, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people are putting themselves on the line to challenge their state and corporations that are threatening them. We are here partly because of their lead, thanks to the great work of the people of Japan and India in highlighting what it takes to challenge this industry. It's going to take thousands. It's going to take next year coming back here and this thing being filled. It's going to take filling places like this across the country. It's going to take a grassroots organizing strategy. That means that we need to have resources. We need to go to the churches. We need to go to the community groups. We need to go to the labor unions. We need to reach out everywhere on all facets at a grassroots level to build this movement. And we need to do it quickly. So let me close with these remarks from Kumar from India, where they're fighting the Kundankulam nuclear power plant. This is Kumar. We strongly condemn the brutal police repression underway in India on the peaceful anti-nuclear protesters in Kundankulam, on the southern tip of India. Within these last few weeks, innocent fishermen have died in this military-style attempt to start the reactor. More than 57,000 innocent people in Kudankulam are facing some kind of fictitious police case, while charges of sedition and war against the Indian state have been slapped against more than 7,000 protesters. While the much-hyped Indo-US deal was touted as a great rendezvous between the world's oldest and largest democracies, the reactors coming as a convergence of this deal in India are being built without any consultation with people and brushing aside unanimous resolutions by the democratic village councils. The United States, as well as other nuclear suppliers, have openly asked India to amend its Nuclear Liability Act to ensure liability-free playing field. The consistently peaceful protest going on for the last 25 years has raised several serious questions. We urge that this brazen contempt for human rights in dealing with democratic and peaceful dissent must come to an end, and the government must initiate open dialogue with the people. This is a message from India. If you do not know about the Kudankulam nuclear reactor, Google it and learn about it. We need to look to India and Japan, because, as I said last night when I was driving in the taxi cab, the #1 cause of cancer around the world is right there, the Washington capital, our capital, our government. Our government has nuclearized Japan. Our government has nuclearized India. Our government is force-feeding nuclear down the throat of Italy, even after the citizens rose up to pass a referendum to ban nuclear power. It's our government that is like a nuclear pusher around the world. So it's not only here in the United States that we have to be concerned, but we have to stand in solidarity with people in India and Japan to fight nukes. Thank you. Bye.
When we were doing the organizing for this event, for this series of events, he was actually in Italy working, so we would have conference calls with people from California. He was in Italy and all over the place. It was truly international, and that's what this movement genuinely is. Here to give us a little bit of the international perspective is a woman I first met over Facebook when she was in Japan doing her activism, and I was putting the podcast together, and we actually did a Skype interview at that time, and she's got quite a story to tell you, and she's here from Southern California to tell you this. Please welcome Kathy Iwane.
Yeah.
Good morning. After 25 years in Japan, I evacuated with my 2 daughters due to the nuclear meltdowns of March 11, 2011. We lived with a Geiger counter for a year, measuring radioactivity in foods and in our environment. Last August, we measured my favorite local sashimi. It's called Modori Gatsuo, and it's skipjack tuna, to be highly radioactive. Mind you, our prefecture, Wakayama, is a full 380 miles away from the Fukushima reactors. And yet last October, a city councilman's test soils revealed radioactive cesium to be 5 times pre-Fukushima levels. After researching ingredients in my daughter's elementary school lunches, I discovered that only 60% of these ingredients were locally procured. The remainder came from outside areas, including near Fukushima. I opted out of the school lunch program, but the principal of my daughter's school, sitting right here, told me, please do not share this information with the PTA or your other mother friends, as this will surely cause panic. My daughter was told to lie to her classmates and the rest of the school that she had an allergy, and thus the homemade lunch. Just last week, Tokyo's Fuchu School City District sent home letters to the parents telling them that radioactive milk from Fukushima would be diluted with milk from other areas in Japan and served to their children for lunch. You might be asking, what kind of society would sacrifice its children like this? Before the disaster, anything measuring over 100 becquerels of cesium per kilogram was labeled nuclear waste. Shockingly, this April, the government told us that this same measurement of contamination in food is safe for us to eat. Many Japanese now know that their government has sold them out. In favor of financially bailing out TEPCO, the owners of the reactors, the government continues to sacrifice children living very near the no-go zone in Fukushima, in highly, highly contaminated radiation hotspots. It is unconscionable that the government doled out another $12.8 billion check this July to keep TEPCO afloat, while 1 in 3 children remain in Fukushima and are being diagnosed with irregularities and growths of the thyroid gland due to radiation contamination. It is a travesty that radioactive debris from the disaster area is now being shipped as far as 1,500 kilometers to southern Japan. It's not just Tokyo, it's southern Japan, to be burned in incinerators. These incinerators are ill-equipped to filter out any radioactivity. This is a regular incinerator made for regular waste. It's happening now in 13 municipalities. The government is paying them to accept radioactive debris all over Japan. This radioactivity escapes into the air, is rained down on the people, onto their crops, into their streams, and further contaminates the food supply. That the taxpayers must foot the bill for their own demise, despite the screams of mothers pleading for their children, despite the 7 million Japanese citizens that have signed petitions for the ending of nuclear power in Japan. This is unthinkable. After all, would not the taxpayers choose to rescue their fellow man? In lieu of saving TEPCO and the government responsible for this disaster? Perhaps you are celebrating Japan's announcement last week to phase out nuclear power by 2030. It's a start. But you need to read the small print. Are you aware that Japan will go forward constructing 3 new nuclear power plants? This is pre-planned, contracted deals. Do you know that Japan will continue to export nuclear power plants and its technologies? Clearly, the hundreds and thousands of Japanese protesting Prime Minister Noda's cozy relationship with the nuclear industry is not enough. We need your help. This is just a foresight of what could happen in our own country. Wake up! Are you aware that Fukushima reactors are still too hot to cap and fully shut down? They continue to release huge amounts of radiation contamination into our ocean. Not just around Japan, it's our ocean and our atmosphere. Our tuna migrate from Japan and they are highly contaminated. Our milk in Northern California measured record amounts of cesium, well above EPA limits. This is not in the headlines. Wake up, everybody. Our 23 General Electric Mark I nuclear reactors, the same one that failed us in Fukushima, those ones in America are also placed near or on fault lines, just like in Japan. Can you fathom how devastating it is to leave one's spouse, one's family, one's friends, one's roots, one's life in order to protect your children? Get the connection. This is not just a Japanese thing. This is not just a Chernobyl thing. This is not just a 3 Mile Island thing. This is our thing.
It's our world.
The U.S. is being hit with Fukushima fallout. It is appalling that this is not an integral part of the election conversations this year. Let's make it a part of these conversations starting today. I pray that the U.S. learns the lessons of Fukushima before history repeats itself. In solidarity with Japan, and in closing, I'd like to use, in the words of Nobel laureate novelist Kenzaburo Oe, I believe the only way to preserve human life is to completely turn away from nuclear power. Thank you.
Beautifully well done. Can't add to it. Our next speaker, Erica Gray, is with the Alliance for Progressive Values. She's a member of the Energy Task Force. She's a native Virginian, and the Alliance for Progressive Values is an all-volunteer educational organization in Richmond, Virginia. It's working with other groups to keep the ban on uranium mining in Virginia, and to demand that Dominion Power invest in renewable energy, solar and wind. I would like to welcome up to the podium right now, from Virginia, Erica Gray.
Thank you, and it's good to see a lot of these faces of people from around the country that we've been communicating over Facebook, Coalition Against Nukes. Great bunch of people, and yes, we're not alone. I have been involved with Alliance for Progressive Values in Richmond for over a year. We're a new group. We work on a lot of different issues, the social issues. Of course, one of the big ones is keep the ban on uranium mining in Virginia. We've had a 30-year ban on mining uranium, and we have a foreign company that wants to come in, mine uranium, and leave us with the radioactive rubble that we have been told by the task force that Governor McDonald put forward to find out some of the studies, and said we'll have to watch over the radioactive rubble for 1,000 years. Now, you know, we have a climate in Virginia, in that area, that gets lots of rain. We get tornadoes. And last year, of course, we just finished celebrating our first earthquake, a 5.8, that actually knocked North Anna Nuclear Power Plant offline. And it exceeded the plant's design. And so, beyond nuclear, not on our fault line, Sierra Club and APV filed an emergency petition order to not allow them to restart, because we had 2 reactors there and they only wanted to check 1. And it also moved the concrete cast 2, 3, 4 inches away. And so nothing is secure. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission really should be considered the National Rubber Stamping Commission, because nothing seems to bother them. In digging up information, I found out that North Anna was actually knowingly built on a fault line. We've had 450 aftershocks, and we know we have a tritium leak that exceeded the EPA drinking water in Louisa. And we also have the Surrey nuclear power plant that's down by Norfolk, and it recently reported a tritium leak as well. So in Virginia, we're working to keep the ban on the uranium mining, and we also would like North Anna and Surrey to close and move towards solar, wind, safe energy sources. It's really important, and thank you.
Industry lies is through semantics. One of the biggest lies that they tell is when they say, well, something that iodine only has a half-life of 8 days. What they don't bother to tell you is that half-life is just what it takes for it to become half as radioactive, but it's still radioactive. In talking with a nuclear engineer, what I learned is that in order to find out how long a radioactive isotope is still dangerous, you need to multiply the number of the half-life by a minimum of 10. And for the which means that if the half-life is 8 days, it's really radioactive for 80 days. Cesium has a half-life of 30 years. Multiply by 10, you've got 300 years before that stuff is going to decay into nothing. And then we've got plutonium, which is 24,000 years of a half-life. And that one really needs to be multiplied by 20. So we're talking close to 500,000 years. In other words, we're talking for forever with the contamination. So just be aware of the linguistic manipulations that are going on. Our next speaker is an attorney who's been very involved with Indian Point. She has also been involved. Oh, Susan, let me get the information. Hold on while I get this exactly the way I need to today. Susan Hito Shapiro. She is a New York State attorney practicing environmental, real estate, and entertainment law and developing sustainable energy, commercial, and residential buildings in the Hudson Valley. She currently serves as a board member for the Hudson River Clearwater, the Radiation and Public Health Project, Public Health and Sustainable Energy, known as PHASE, the Tibetan House of Hope, and many other organizations. She's here to give us an update on Indian Point and many other observations. Susan Hito Shapiro.
Hi, so we're here today to tell our congressional leaders that the NRC has become a lapdog for the nuclear industry and that Congress needs to enact its oversight. Nuclear power imposes an unacceptable danger on American health through regulated and unregulated daily releases of radiation. It releases up to 60 pounds a day, each plant, into our atmosphere of radiation. Failure to solve the nuclear waste problem along with recent security failures in plants such as Indian Point, has left tons of weapons-grade uranium unsecured in the hands of private profiteering corporations. By the way, the nuclear fuse cycle is far from carbon-free. The CFC gases and the heat waste are also major contributors to climate change. So they continue to falsely advertise, and we need to change that dialogue. So what's the solution to this nuclear problem in this country? Well, it's relatively simple. Ending the nuclear energy production in this country will create millions of sustainable American jobs, protect American health, and reduce health care costs. Ending the nuclear failed experiment is a win-win situation. After Fukushima, there are almost 40,000 deaths caused by the radioactive releases of Fukushima, and possibly more. A Union of Concerned Science study found a meltdown at Indian Point would cause 44,000 deaths within the first year and over 500,000 deaths over time. The Radiation Public Health Project Research Group studies found that levels of strontium-90 are significantly higher in all reactor communities, causing increased breast cancer and prostate cancer as well as other cancers. Infant mortality rates and childhood cancers dramatically increase following the closure of nuclear plants. In a recent RPHP study based on CDC data, thyroid cancer rates in the areas surrounding Indian Point were over 66% higher than the national average. National thyroid cancer rates have tripled since 1980. Thyroid cancer is the marker of exposure to radiation. So we are calling on all the reactor communities to do their own studies, to get their own zip code cancer registry studies, send it to RPHP, and we will do an analysis as to what the levels of thyroid cancer are in this country and how they drop off once you move away from the reactor. The NRC uses an acceptable exposure level for radiation based on the standard American man, Sam. Sam is a white male who's 20 to 30 years old, 6 feet tall, 180 pounds. So that leaves the most vulnerable members of our society totally unprotected. That leaves women, children, fetuses, and the elderly unequally protected. All members of American society must be equally protected. We must have Congress change the standard. For more information, you can go to radiation.org on the health issues. And today, because there is no nuclear waste confidence rule anymore, thousands of tons of weapons-grade uranium has been left in the hands of private corporations whose bottom line is profit, not safety. This high-level radioactive waste has leaked and continues to leak into regional water supplies. It's placed on earthquake fault zones throughout the country, and we spend hundreds of billions of dollars, and yet only 5% of this waste is stabilized. And just last week, a top security officer at Indian Point filed a $1.5 billion lawsuit against the NRC and Entergy due to, quote, critically and potentially lethal security failures, inadequate training of security personnel, flaws and weakness in security protocols, lighting, hardware, software, and general equipment. They don't have the proper vests. They don't have the proper equipment at all. And security guards have been found sleeping on the job again. The security team has failed multiple force-on-force drills, so instead of training them, they canceled the drills. Now, between January and July of this year alone, there were over 1,000 times that were documented that the electronic perimeter, cameras, alarms, and security system completely crashed, froze, and shut down. Instead of spending whatever it takes to ensure the safety of 20 million people living within 50 miles of Indian Point, the NRC and Entergy attempted to hide their security failures, attempted to stop the security guards from speaking to save profits, and they left Indian Point and New York City totally unprotected. And on top of that, during these security perimeter failures, the spent fuel from units 2 and 3 are being moved around and commingled. This scenario sets up a ripe scenario for loose nuclear material to fall into the hands of enemies of the state, both domestic and foreign, right here on American soil, 24 miles from New York City. Therefore, I am calling on President Obama to issue an immediate executive order to 1. Transfer title of all spent fuel created by civilian nuclear production to the federal government under the DOE, and end this federal government paying large annual fines to the nuclear industry for breach of contract for failing to take title, as it was originally agreed to under the Atomic Energy Act. 2. For all spent fuel older than 5 years to be placed in hardened, dry cast storage in earthen berms, protected by the Department of Defense, not by private security hired by private corporations. And 3. Require powered emergency backup battery systems for all spent fuel pools to ensure no loss. Require solar backup power for all spent fuels pools to ensure no loss of cooling in the event of an extended outage. Time is of the essence. National security is at stake. Okay, so that's our security problems. But what's the solution for America? Nuclear and fossil fuel energy fiasco. Well, the solution is relatively simple, realistic, doable, and it will quickly create millions of sustainable American jobs in manufacturing and technology. Isn't that what everyone's talking about right now? Jobs. Ending nuclear will create jobs. The arithmetic is simple. A U of Mass study found that for every $1 million invested, 12 smart grid jobs are created, 13 to 14 solar and wind jobs, 16 biomass jobs, 17 jobs in conservation retrofitting, and 22 jobs in mass transit. Yet, for the same million investment, only 4 nuclear jobs are created, 5 in natural gas and 7 in coal. So let's tell our elected officials to put our money where the jobs are. Let's put America back to work and build a strong, vibrant economy with sustainable energy job creators and end low-job nuclear energy and fracking. We don't need to transition to natural gas from nuclear. Let's transition directly to sustainable energy. The technology exists. It's just a matter of political will. German solar plants produce 22 gigawatts of electricity, equal to 20 nuclear power plants. We have almost 4,000 times more solar capacity than Germany, yet we produce 6,000 less energy. Why? Because because we unequally subsidize nuclear, gas, and solar instead of equal subsidies for true sustainable energy. Once again, unequal protection. We put men on the moon and beyond. Surely we can power America safely. So let's use 1% of our defense budget to quickly build sustainable energy infrastructure, the same way Eisenhower and Truman built the interstate highway system for national defense. America's strength and wealth is in our natural resources, the sun, the wind, the oceans, our rivers, and our grasslands, and especially in our people. We can replace the energy but not the lives, so let's do it. Let's lower the radiation exposure to ensure Americans are healthier. Let's protect our children and our future. Let's demand that part of our $6.5 billion defense budget is used to defend our homeland and build a sustainable energy infrastructure. Let's demand that our military protect and secure spent nuclear weapons-grade uranium, not profit-making private corporations. Let's tell Congress it must, not the NEI lobbyists, oversee the NRC. Let's tell Congress to protect Americans' health and future. Let's tell Congress to end nuclear production and proliferation and create millions of sustainable American jobs. We can do it. So let's just do it now.
About getting solar to be the backup at nuclear power plants. Down at San Onofre in Southern California, they have warning sirens that are up all around the plant that need to be triggered if there's an accident. But if there's an accident at a nuclear power plant, where's the energy going to come from? That's why every warning siren at the San Onofre nuclear power plant has a solar panel attached to it so that it will be able to operate if anything goes wrong at a nuclear power plant. What does that tell us about our energy supply? It's numbnuts. It's total numbnuts. Our next speaker has been working on the Vogtle plant a lot. The problems with the creation of a new nuclear plant down in Georgia. Courtney Hansen is responsible for executing Georgia One's public relations and media plan. She's also lead organizer in environmental justice work and coordinates community and partner organizations. She's up here to share some of what her wisdom is about with us from the stage today. Please welcome Courtney Hansen.
Hi, thanks. I'm Courtney, and I'm here today representing Georgia, where the first 2 nuclear reactors in the U.S. in 30 years are currently under construction. They're being built at Plant Vogtle in Burke County, Georgia. It's a very rural, poor, and mostly African-American community, and it's ground zero for nuclear expansion in the U.S. We in Georgia know it, and the nuclear industry knows it, and they need this project to go well if they're going to continue. But it's not going well. Construction flaws are happening, it's way over budget, and there is a growing grassroots movement against the plan. Yeah. And so what is the industry to do? Well, they're continuously putting more fuel into the propaganda machine and trying to tell us that this project, that nuclear energy, is cheap and safe and clean, and we know that it is none of those things. They tell us that it's safe, but we really do. We know better. Since the first 2 reactors were built at Vogtle, the cancer rates in the community have skyrocketed, and they're now well above the national average. And we know from the still unfolding disaster at Fukushima that no matter how much precaution we as human beings take, nuclear energy will never be safe. We see countries around the world heeding this warning, backing out of nuclear power. But in the US and in Georgia, the industry is going forward at lightning speed. They're not even stopping to account for new safety lessons learned as a result of Fukushima. This just isn't safe. But they try to tell us that it is. They also try to tell us that it is clean, but we know better. The Savannah River, where Plant Vogtle sits and where it draws 60 million gallons of water from every single day, is the 4th most polluted river in the United States. Radioactive fish have been found in this river. The water has been found to be radioactive. The crops in the area have been found to be contaminated. The rainwater, the livestock, it is dirty. And yet, the Department of Energy stopped funding ending environmental monitoring in the area a decade ago. So the folks that have been living off the land for generations don't know definitively what's contaminated and what's not. They don't know if their lifestyle is in fact killing them. And finally, the nuclear industry tells us that nuclear power is cheap, but every single resident in Georgia knows better than that. Southern Company has worked a sweetheart deal out for themselves. They're charging us a tax every month on our bills to pay for their dirty project. We will never see a financial return on our investment. We'll never get that money back. And when the project goes over budget, which it inevitably does, we know that actually not one single nuclear reactor has come in on budget in the United States. We, the people, will have to pay for those overruns. Currently, Vogtle is over budget by $1 million, and it's really just history repeating itself. The first 2 reactors there went over budget by about 1,200%, and it led to the largest rate hike in Georgia at the time. So we know that this isn't cheap. We know that the nuclear industry, nuclear power has never meant anything more than simply corporations stealing our money to build plants that are poisoning us and destroying our environment. And now it's time to fight back. Now it's time to say no to the nuclear renaissance, to say that nuclear expansion stops at Plant Vogtle. It stops now. It's so wonderful to be a man among so many allies, people who really love this planet, who want a better world for their children than what the nuclear industry is giving us. So I encourage you to join the fight against Vogtle, because together we can stop the nuclear industry one reactor at a time.